Greetings, friends. You really don't need to be a doctor, and you don't need to be particularly interested in health science to know which things, factors, or our habits have a negative impact on our heart and the condition of our blood vessels. Seriously, guys, is it even possible nowadays in the 21st century to find someone who doesn't know that smoking greatly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease? Of course, everyone knows that. And almost everyone can confirm, or at least has heard at least once, maybe even more than once, that a sedentary lifestyle significantly increases the risk of developing heart disease. So look, smoking and a sedentary lifestyle are both very specific and important risk factors. These are circumstances of our lives, our habits, that increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. There are also other risk factors that you've heard about. At the very least, we've talked about them often on this channel. Overeating and as a result, excess weight and obesity. All of this is very bad for our heart. Excessive salt consumption is also very harmful. It's also very bad to ignore preventive medicine. You know, those obvious things like annual medical checkups, monitoring blood pressure, checking lipid metabolism, blood glucose levels, measuring body mass index, and at least occasionally getting an electrocardiogram. And of course, everyone knows that excessive alcohol consumption is bad for our heart. And it's also very bad to get nervous. In other words, emotional stress is just terrible for the heart. There's nothing good about it. So look, my friends, I definitely haven't told you anything new just now. After all, you already know that everything I've listed is bad for the heart. There are nevertheless certain risk factors for cardiovascular disease that unfortunately are not obvious to most of us. For example, have you ever thought about the fact that, as a matter of fact, working at night, or really any kind of shift work, actually does significantly increase the likelihood of experiencing a heart attack? This kind of work has a very negative effect on our circadian rhythm and the quality of our sleep. I suppose there's a chance that I've already told you something new here, something worth thinking about. And in fact, today I'd like to list 10, not entirely clear, not entirely obvious circumstances, factors, or phenomena in our lives. These are circumstances that can negatively affect our heart. And this needs to be taken into account. We need to draw the right conclusions from this. And in the end, well, at the end of the video, we'll make those conclusions. So, let's begin. Yes, the first point has already been mentioned. There's really nothing left to explain. Shift work and working at night. Second, dental problems. There is a lot of data showing that a wide variety of issues, stomatitis, gingivitis, periodontitis, basically any gum problems, increase the risk of heart disease. There is a theory that the bacteria causing inflammatory processes in the oral cavity, these bacteria enter the bloodstream and negatively affect the blood vessels. Third, loneliness. In a very serious and comprehensive document, which was officially published at the government level in the United States in the year 2023, a very recent and significant report, it was clearly reported that both loneliness and social isolation can substantially increase the risk of developing heart disease by about 30%. This finding highlights the importance of social connections for maintaining good heart health. Fourth, an unhappy marriage. Yes, that is also a risk factor for heart disease. 50% of marriages here end in divorce. Can you imagine how much heart disease we have? That's a condition for it. So, constant arguments, a sense of dissatisfaction with life, and alongside that, as a rule, there are unhealthy eating habits, alcohol, and so on and so forth. Fifth, being an anti-vaxxer or not having the opportunity to get certain vaccinations also increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases. I'm waiting for the commenters who will once again write about how much money I was supposedly paid. So, getting a flu shot reduces the risk of a heart attack by at least 20%. The shingles vaccine, which unfortunately elderly people in Ukraine do not have access to, reduces the risk of heart attack and stroke in the elderly by 15%. And no matter what conspiracy theorists say, or those who claim that the whole coronavirus situation was invented just to make money off vaccinations, the fact remains full vaccination against COVID-19 reduces the risk of heart attacks and strokes after contracting the coronavirus. Another very unexpected risk factor is traffic jams. There are very convincing studies that prove that every hour spent in a traffic jam actually increases the risk of a heart attack. So, thinking about how to occupy yourself in a traffic jam or about having a companion to talk to actually helps prevent heart problems. Next, and this is already the seventh point, is sudden physical activity. No, of course, physical exercise is very beneficial, especially when it is measured, when the duration and intensity of workouts gradually increase, and when you have an experienced trainer guiding you through all of this, right? It's great when you consult with a doctor and together with the doctor determine what amount of physical activity is appropriate for you. But when there are too many exercises at once, or when an unprepared person suddenly starts shoveling snow, planting potatoes, or tries to run after a departing trolley bus, this is, of course, very, very dangerous. 8. Snoring. If you snore, or if the person who has the fortune or misfortune of sharing a bed with you, if that lucky person complains that you snore, then this is very serious, especially if there is a feeling as if you are suffocating in your sleep. Snoring is almost always associated with cardiovascular pathology, arrhythmia, hypertension, or heart failure. 9. Early menopause. This refers to menopause occurring before the age of 46. Obviously, this is not something that depends much on you, but it's important to understand that this circumstance is always associated with a drop in estrogen levels, and this increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. 10. Air pollution, environmental issues in general, air quality is a very serious risk factor for cardiovascular disease. If you live in an industrial region, in a city, or somewhere with an excess of cars, all of this increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. Look, my friends, here are 10 not so obvious risk factors that I've listed. Of course, the list doesn't end here, but the 10 problems I've mentioned are quite specific, clear, and tangible. 10 problems, 10 reasons to think about it. Obviously, we need to somehow respond to everything I've listed. But how? Well, go to the dentist, not just go to the gym, but actually spend some time working with a trainer so you can learn how to properly manage your workouts. Don't just put up with an unhappy marriage. Calmly work things out and see a family therapist. Get vaccinated against the flu, for example. But essentially, the most important thing I sincerely want to draw your attention to is this. If any of the things I mentioned are present in your life, you really need to make absolutely sure that your consistently healthy and positive habits and right actions always outweigh the wrong ones. In short, the main point is, when there are hidden risk factors present, you need to completely and thoroughly implement all the obvious and necessary right actions. This is very, very relevant for you. Quit smoking, limit alcohol consumption, spend more time outdoors, interact with good people, get regular checkups, and organize proper nutrition. But perhaps most importantly, draw the right conclusions from the information you've received.